Recently, a question was asked of me, and basically it was this. Pope Francis obviously has a plan to change the church. What plan do the traditional Catholics have? But it seems to me that the real question must instead be this. What is God's plan for our times? Before I commence, I will first say that I have a question for my listeners, which I will later share in this podcast. And also, at the end of this podcast, I have a brief announcement or two. To return to the question of what is God's plan for our times. As I have often said, both here on Genesis 3:15 and in videos for the Fatima Center, the answer is this. It is God's will that devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary is spread throughout the world. Over the past few years, and again of late, many of us have heard quite a few proposed plans to beg God to help us, to protect the good bishops and the good priests, and to unite the clans. By the way, to ensure that you don't miss any of my new broadcasts, please take a few seconds right now to give this episode a thumbs up, and if you have not done so already, please subscribe to Genesis 3:15. Now, some of those just mentioned suggestions in and of themselves might be good, but still these ideas do not mention, unless in passing, Our Lady of Fatima. And that terrible omission never fails to grieve and disappoint many of us. That is, those proposing their ideas on what might be the solution do not declare and piously urge their listeners to obey the Mother of God's 5 commands at Fatima, which could be summed up, so to speak, in repentance, prayer, and sacrifice by 5 specific means. Now, since those 5 means are often mentioned here on Genesis 3:15, today I won't repeat them, but again, you could always look at the Genesis 3:15 playlist, and you will easily find references to all 5 of them. Meanwhile, we are seeing some edifying examples of public rosary prayers or references to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, but again, what we are not seeing or hearing is any move on any member of the church hierarchy or even among the more prominent laity to motivate us and to lead the way to practice exactly that which Our Lady commanded at Fatima. That said, in the last 3 years, I have at least 3 times referenced to the saying, unite the clans, by adding that there is only one way to do that. That is, we can only unite the clans under the banner of Our Lady of Fatima by living and ardently sharing the Virgin's directives at Fatima. I've also publicly urged our prelates and the Catholic commentators out there to charitably and boldly direct us to practice those 5 commands, because doing so is the only solution given to us by God Himself through His Holy Mother. So, here's my question, and I hope that you will charitably respond whatever may be your answer. Do you think that the hierarchy, and at least the Catholic commentators, especially those who are considered to be traditional, should on a much more frequent basis promote the whole message of Fatima? You're listening to Genesis 3:15. I will put enmities between thee and the woman, and thy seed and her seed. She shall crush thy head, and thou shalt lie in wait for her heel. I'm your host, Mariana Bartold, the author of Fatima, The Signs and Secrets, and Guadalupe, Secrets of the Image, both which are available at Amazon. And to find any links to my works, you will need only look into the description box below this podcast. To continue. In the interim, we are, by a more well-known source or two, being told, and rightly so, that we get the priests or the hierarchy that we deserve. But let's consider that something similar was said centuries ago by St. John Eudes, a doctor of the Church, and there were saints before him who did the same. What did St. John Eudes write? Quote, "Religious people keep silence, but every blaspheming tongue is let loose. Sacred things are profaned. Those of the laity who are sound in faith avoid the places of worship as schools of impiety, and raise their hands in solitudes with groans and tears to the Lord in heaven." Later he wrote, "Matters have come to this pass. The people have left their houses of prayer and assemble in deserts, a pitiable sight. Women and children, old men, and men otherwise infirm, wretchedly faring in the open air, amid the most profuse rains and snowstorms and winds and frosts of winter, and again in summer under a scorching sun. To this they submit, because they will have no part in the wicked Aryan leaven. Soon after that he also penned these words: "Only one offense is now vigorously punished, an accurate observance of our fathers' traditions. For this cause the pious are driven from their countries and transported into deserts. The people are in lamentation, in continual tears at home and abroad. There is a cry in the city, a cry in the country, in the roads, in the deserts. Joy and spiritual cheerfulness are no more. Our feasts are turned into mourning. Our houses of prayer are shut up, our altars deprived of the spiritual worship." Now let's fast forward to our modern times and consider what Our Lady said, as we also consider the times in which we now live. As I have in the past pointed out, the message of Fatima is the message of Akita. We should, with spiritual eyes wide open, be able to recognize that we are indeed living in the times prophesied by the Mother of God. In the third secret vision of Fatima, we see that it opens with an angel with a flaming sword, as if to set the world on fire. Unfortunately, nobody paid any attention to that part of the vision until I linked the angel with that flaming sword, as if to set the world on fire, to what the Virgin said at Akita, Japan, on October the 13th, 1973. Quote, "The work of the devil will infiltrate even into the church in such a way that one will see cardinals opposing cardinals, bishops against bishops. The priests who venerate me will be scorned and opposed by their confreres. Churches and altars will be sacked. The church will be full of those who accept compromises, and the demon will press many priests and consecrated souls to leave the service of the Lord. The demon will be especially implacable against the souls consecrated to God. The thought of the loss of so many souls is the cause of my sadness. If sins increase in number and gravity, there will be no longer pardon for them. As I told you, if men do not repent and better themselves, the Father will inflict a terrible punishment on all humanity. It will be a punishment greater than the deluge, such as one will never have seen before. Fire will fall from the sky and will wipe out a great part of humanity, the good as well as the bad, sparing neither priests nor faithful. The survivors will find themselves so desolate that they will envy the dead." Unquote. Now, with that warning from the Mother of God fresh in our minds, let us consider what was reported in the Scriptures in Genesis 19, verses 24 through 28. Quote, "And the Lord rained upon Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven, and he destroyed these cities, and all the country about, all the inhabitants of the cities, and all things that spring from the earth. And his wife, looking behind her, was turned into a pillar of salt. And Abraham got up early in the morning, and in the place where he had stood before with the Lord, he looked towards Sodom and Gomorrah, and the whole land of that country, and he saw the ashes rise up from the earth as the smoke of a furnace." Unquote. So it has happened before, and it can happen again. The vision of the third secret certainly shows us a half-ruined city, which may be the city of Rome. We are seeing dead bodies of various priests, bishops, and lay people, all lying on the ground as a bishop dressed in white, who may or may not be the Holy Father, goes on his way to a cross that is made as of a cork tree bark. So what is God's plan for our times? What is the solution? Well, we had better do what the Mother of God and our mother told us to do at Fatima. We should do this for love of God, but even if we have not yet reached that highest degree of charity, we should consider the state of our own souls and those of our loved ones. If we do not heed our loving mother's instructions at Fatima, we will very soon be at the point of which she later warned at Akita, wherein she said, "The only arms which will remain for you will be the rosary and the sign left by my son. Each day recite the prayers of the rosary. With the rosary, pray for the Pope, the bishops, and the priests." Now, with that said, I want to add just one comment. People often ask, what is this sign left by my son of which Our Lady spoke at Akita? There are all kinds of opinions on it, but it seems to me it should be obvious. It is the sign of the cross, which is in the Bible the sign of contradiction, as we read when Our Lady and Saint Joseph presented the Christ child in the temple, and the prophet Simeon spoke of this sign. So to continue with what Our Lady said, when she told us, "The only arms which will remain for you will be the rosary and the sign left by my son." In other words, we may very well not have the Mass available to us at all, or access to the sacrament of confession, or to any of the sacraments except baptism, which can be accomplished by the laity in extreme circumstances and with the right form, matter, and intent. Imagine how terrible will church and world circumstances at that point be, and the impact it will have on everyone, including us and our loved ones. And so now, before I conclude this episode, I will make those few announcements. First, I do want to remind my listeners to often check the Community tab on the Genesis 315 channel. There I will share either another video that I have made somewhere else or a post when I myself cannot get online. Second, please know that I am still dealing with rural internet issues, and so for the time being, I might be making more podcasts like these rather than videos, which can literally take me all day to babysit as I upload them and must watch in case they did not successfully upload. I'm sure you understand that nobody can do that on a regular basis, so I would rather hope for the opportunity of making more frequent podcasts rather than a lesser number of videos. So I thank you for your understanding, and I thank you for listening and for subscribing to Genesis 315. Also, please don't forget to answer my earlier question by making a comment in the appropriate area for this video. Until the next time, may God bless you, and may Our Lady Mary keep you and yours under her starry mantle.